question 4. J'ai démontré dans mon travail que les droits sexuels font la promotion d'un enfant sexualisé dès la naissance. Donc, il y aurait des désirs sexuels, un consentement sexuel et qu'il faudrait éduquer sexuellement. Et j'ai indiqué, ici même, sur cette radio, que ce n'est pas Freud qui a dit cela, mais Kinsey. Pouvez-vous nous dire qui était Kinsey et pourquoi a-t-il acquis une telle crédibilité scientifique?
Well, really, Kinsey was a nobody. I mean, he was a zoologist. He specialized in getting little gall wasps from trees, and he would measure them, and then he would pin them to little boxes and so forth. That's what he did for a living, so to speak. You know, and so, but he was a sexual pervert. And as a sexual pervert, he had gathered around him others, a few who also were sexual perverts. And he was selected by the Rockefeller Foundation. The Rockefellers being involved in all kinds of issues like this. Rockefeller, by the way, having been the most hated man in the United States when he was in about the 1920s, had to do something to get himself resurrected, and so he started to contribute a lot of money to art and so on. And he also found, they also found Kinsey. They found Kinsey. I don't know how they found Kinsey or how he found them, but the two of them, the foundation and Kinsey got together, and they at the Indiana University funded this insect measurer, you know, the largest study on human sexuality ever conducted in the history of human evolution or human development. He was given money by the Indiana University, which was also being run by a highly questionable guy as president, and then he began his massive research, but he covered it up. He said that he was just going to be doing research on marriage, and then it turned out that he was working with a group. He said, we have a group, we're going to do it together. But he got rid of everybody in the group until finally he was the only person around, and he could conduct this research, quote unquote, without any interference, because he was being supported by a president who shared his proclivities, I would say, and by a media that was under the control of similar people. He only allowed people who would answer the questions he gave them to be part of this, in the media, to report on his research. So his research and his publication of the research were produced under carefully controlled circumstances, so that the American public received only these glowing reports about what? That they were all hypocrites, that the public were all hypocrites after World War II, which we essentially in the United States won for the world. Thank you very much. That after all that sacrifice, our people, our guys, and some of our women in the service came home. And they wanted to start a life. They didn't pay attention to this ridiculous stuff they were reading. The war ended in 45. In 46, 47, people were coming home. He produced his first book in 48. That's not enough time for anybody to take it in and to critique it, much less a nation of men and women who were traumatized by the war. So it fit into this wonderful funnel. The publicity went out to the world. Your mother and your father were having sex with everybody. They were just having a great time. They simply wouldn't tell you. So you know, after a short, it took a little while, from 48, his information was put through, it was planned to be put through to the legal system in 1955. In 1953, his book on females came out. So that's 48, his male book, 53, his female book. 1955, the American Law Institute Model Penal Code, yeah, came out with all the new laws for the nation, in which they would believe everything that hair Dr. Kinsey pronounced. And that's how everything started to fall apart, because all the law professors were funneling these lies into the law journals, and you know, that became what the people believed. It's interesting because President Reagan made a comment when he was president in 1981, and he said, you know, he said, it's hard to realize, he said, but it's true. He said, for the past 30 years, that is since the 50s, he says, the law has been favoring criminals and paying no attention to victims. Well, it wasn't hard to understand if you realize what was going on at the time.
Actually,
And Kinsey was the father of the 10 to 37% are homosexual. You know, he said, so homosexuality is normal. And you have to understand one more thing, that when he was doing his so-called research, yeah, and he did 86% of the people he interviewed were not in the service, were not in the army, were not anywhere, it had nothing to do with World War II. Well, the only people that did not enter the war, that were not serving, yeah, at all in any aspect of the war, because you couldn't talk to anybody when you were in the service, would be criminals, homosexuals who are not allowed into the army, into the military, children, and so on and so on. So he had every pervert in the world, and I have it all documented in my book.
Right. I mean, your work is remarkable about Kinsey's influence and evil influence over sexual behavior of humanity and mankind. And you know, we have to remind our listeners that Kinsey studied at the Harvard in the 20s, at the time of the hotbed of eugenics research, and he was also part of the, he was the first, was one of the scholarly eugenicists of pre-World War II, according to biographer also James Jones. And he recommended that a portion of the lower classes be sterilized to foster a more robust gene pool. So among his intimates was Dr. Ewan Cameron, the infamous CIA-funded mind control doctor. And also another of Kinsey's influences was Dr. Herman Mueller, one of his colleagues at Indiana University. Mueller, who began being received by Rockefeller funding from the National Research Council in 1925, received a Guggenheim grant in 1932 to pursue his work in the genetics department of the Rockefeller-funded Kaiser Wilhelm Brain Research Institute in Berlin. So you see,
so you're reading my books.
Yes, exactly. That's part of your book. Exactly.
There's at least 7 of you, anyway.
Yes, exactly. That's part of the book. And you also mentioned he was influenced by Aleister Crowley, the great beast.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's very important because it's
who had been kicked out of Ireland for murders of little babies and various other things. But, yeah, he was a nasty guy.
Je vais simplifier un peu la question 4, sur la question des lobbies pédophiles et des procédés totalitaires. J'aimerais que Judith Weissman nous dise quelle est quel rôle, en fait, peut avoir l'idéologie Kinsey dans des procédés totalitaires visant à promouvoir cette idéologie de l'enfant sexualisé et à quoi ça sert? Voilà.
Look, probably the best illustration of the insane, absolute insanity, of our societies, I make this plural, is this idea that boys can be girls, girls can be boys, that you can change your birth report, that you decided you're not a boy, you're a girl, and so on and so on. And that males can enter private areas, toilets, lockers, and so on, where a girl is, where women are, if they have put on a wig and they put on plastic bosoms, they can just go right on in, which I've written about. Yes, of course, there have been rapes like crazy. I mean, certainly they've been abusing, some parents actually even send their children to these places to become girls and boys, so they and so on. Well, that is that's insanity in its real definition, insanity. There's, your definition of health is the ability to grasp reality. Yeah? And there's absolutely no reality anymore here in such a group. But that's the most damaged kind of group. It has degrees of influence in the society. So your American Association for the Advancement of Science, I'm thinking of the other one, American Psychiatric Association. Yeah, the American Psychiatric Association lost all of its credibility in 1973, I think it was, when they determined that homosexuality is a perfectly healthy way of life. Well, we knew at that time, historically, cross-culturally, historically, every body of information said people essentially engage in homosexual activity from the time because they have been sexually abused. Boys, yeah, sexual abuse will lead to homosexuality. Well, all of that background, all of that history, cross-cultural history, and so on, was out the window because there was a decision by the American Psychiatric Association under tremendous pressure from the gay lesbian groups. Well, at the time it was, gay lesbian. Now it's gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, undecided. I forgot the rest of them, and it goes on and on. So there is complete abandonment of reality. Complete. If you, there's a young man, Ben Shapiro, who's become a big hero here in the United States for the conservative movement, and he was interviewing or giving a speech at one of the universities, and one of the young women in the audience, who really still thinks she's a young woman, said, but gender determines your your sexuality. So Ben said, he said, how old are you? So she said, I'm 22. And he said, why aren't you 60? At which point she's, why aren't you 60? Why can't you be, if you're going to change, think that you can change what is biologically, every ounce of you is a female, biological female. Why can't you just decide you're going to be 60 years old instead of 22 and get some of the advantages of the old age, yeah? So that's the insanity to which our young people are exposed in college. These people will run your courts, your international courts. They will be running your police force. They will and they are at this point, and absolutely are part of your psychological, your psychologists, your psychiatrists, your social workers, your lawyers have to sign paperwork that say that they will not discriminate because they will believe that homosexuality, all of these various sexualities are perfectly normal. So once you've signed on the dotted line as a professional, you commit yourself to that way of thinking, and it does not allow you to deal with reality. I hope that answered.
So it's all based upon, it's a trauma-based mind control society, basically.
Yes, yeah. You're talking about cortisol flowing through the body. You're talking about a child being conditioned with, when I said they confuse, they have fear, they have shame, they have trauma, and they think that is sexual because it goes from the eyes to the back of the skull, down the central nervous system, down the spinal cord, into the genitals. Fear, 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 and everyone around them says that's sex. Oh, I guess that's what it is. I don't know what sex is, but that must be what it is. So the rest of their lives, they fall into that very confused pattern.